I don't know if you guys have heard about this story. I'm going to say one thing to start it off, which is the NAACP is crap. San Francisco had a reparations task force. I talked about this, I believe, the first time they mentioned it. And they came up with a list of items, action items to give Black people reparations in San Francisco. Now, this is just for San Francisco, not the entire state. Among those items included cash payment. Let's get into that. And then I'm going to tell you what the NAACP did. Now, this was the board. They had done their research. They knew the data. They knew exactly what was needed to put African Americans at level footing with white Americans in San Francisco.
First tonight, before Russia, forget the culture wars, just for a second, over bathrooms, drag shows, pronouns, books, etc. Something much bigger is already happening, and no surprise, perhaps, it is starting in San Francisco. We're talking about slavery reparations. The committee in San Francisco to decide these things hasn't done an analysis of the proposal's costs, but the negotiation starts at payments of $5 million to every eligible Black adult, the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual income of at least $97,000 for 250 years, homes in San Francisco, just $1 for a family. No, this is not a joke. This is the actual proposal. To qualify, someone would have to prove they're over 18 years old, have identified as Black or African American on public records for at least 10 years. And then there are two other criteria, which could still change. But right now, you have to meet two of these: being born in or migrated to San Francisco between 1940 and 1996, lived in the city for 13 years or more, displaced from San Francisco by urban renewal between 1954 and 73. You could be the descendant of someone who was displaced between 54 and 73, being a person incarcerated by the war on drugs, the descendant of someone who was incarcerated by the war on drugs, attending the city's public schools before they were fully desegregated, or descending from a person who was a U.S. slave before 1865.
Now, let's pause there because I want to add something really quick. So you see the requirements. You had to meet at least two of those. Now, when he says that they didn't do an analysis, that's not true. They did the research on this. This has been talked about for quite a while. You have to understand that San Francisco has the highest rent in the country. Rent in San Francisco is more expensive than rent in New York City, believe it or not. San Francisco once had a thriving African-American population. They were displaced, most of them, because it's just too expensive to live there. So some moved to places like Oakland, some left the state. But the average person can't afford to live in San Francisco. It's just the reality of it. You can thank the tech industry for that, by the way. But look at the way that he's talking about it. He's talking about it as though I can't believe they're actually asking for this. But if you do the research, it makes sense. The data has been presented about this multiple times. Now, let's go on because there's something else I want to show you. This article, it says San Francisco faces backlash over reparations support political ploy. Let's go down. See how they're making it political? See how they made it political? Let's go down. This is why I said focus on the issue, leave politics out of it. Outrage erupted online after the San Francisco Board of Supervisors expressed support for a controversial reparations proposal that would give every eligible Black resident $5 million. Let me explain. It's not like everybody would get a $5 million check immediately. That's not how this would work. Notice the guy in the video told you they would get like $97,000 over the course of 250 years. So I want to make that very clear. It's not like they were just going to say, here's $5 million check. That's not how it was supposed to be done. Let's go on. San Francisco City appointed African American Reparations Advisory Committee presented the plan to the board for the first time on Tuesday and received enthusiastic support from board members. The plan, which was released in draft form in December, mandates a $5 million lump sum payment to each eligible adult Black resident. It would also wipe out debt and guarantee annual pay in line with the area median income, $97,000 in 2022, to those eligible for the next 250 years. The proposal was blasted as an impractical political ploy by many online commentators soon after news of the board's support emerged on Tuesday, with those on the political right expressing particular outrage. Now, there are several reparation committees that have been established. It's not just San Francisco. There's one here in Boston. There's one for the entire state of California. Camilla came on to talk about that. This is happening in different places because cities are trying to find a way to pay that debt that is owed. And obviously, the national level is where you would want to have it, but they're trying to figure out how can we fix this sooner, rather than later, because the chances of it happening nationally seem slim to none, right? So just keep that in mind. It goes on to say San Francisco is considering $5 million payouts to Blacks for reparations. This is a tweet from Christine Quinn, former Republican congressional candidate. For what? California didn't have any slave owners or slaves in the entire state. That is actually false. Camilla explained this when she came on to talk about slavery in California. California did have slaves. That is actually false. So you see how Newsweek, they took this tweet, didn't do any research, and they put it in this article like it was gold. Didn't do any research. Let's go on. Of course, Larry Elder says, let me get this straight, coming from former California GOP Larry Elder tweeted, a Black college educated San Franciscan with money in the Silicon Valley Bank gets full reimbursement though his deposit exceeds FDIC $250K limit, receives $5 million in reparations, and gets student debt loan forgiveness. Is this a great country or what? First of all, we haven't received student debt loan forgiveness. That's tied up in the courts. Let's go on. San Francisco reparations idea, $5 million per Black person. This is coming from conservative commentator John Cardillo. California wasn't a slave state. This is how effing stupid California is. Again, people don't know what they're talking about. California did have slaves. You see this? And what's upsetting is that, again, Newsweek didn't even check. They didn't even check. So they put a bunch of tweets here. And it says, while slavery was always illegal in California, reparation proponents say that measures are needed to address the long-term impact of slavery and institutional racism across the country. Black Americans continue to be disproportionately affected by poverty, homelessness, and imprisonment. But what you have to also understand is that not every Black person that lives in California was born in California. There were Black people that lived in the South, moved from the South to places like California, to places like Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. Black people have moved. It's just, I feel like they just don't, this makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. So That was the proposal. Now I want to show you something, because this was the tweet that set people on fire the other night. It was from Tariq Nasheed. He said the NAACP does not represent the views and values of the 40 million foundational Black Americans who are qualified for cash payment reparations. Here's that letter that pissed people off. Actually, it's better if I leave it like this. This is from the NAACP San Francisco branch. San Francisco NAACP rejects 5 million reparation payment to Blacks. Calls for reparation to focus on investments and opportunities in 5 key areas. Here's the areas it says to focus on: invest in education, economic empowerment. It says with Biden's infrastructure bill, we want to see more Black people get the opportunity to get jobs on the billions of dollars in infrastructure work that will be done in our community and state. I'm going to debunk all of these. First and foremost, this one: invest in education. Public schools are funded by property taxes. So if you don't have many Black homeowners in neighborhoods that are upper middle class, wealthy, the public schools in those areas are not going to have the resources that it needs. They're not going to have the same resources as these schools in a wealthy white neighborhood or upper middle class white neighborhood. People have to understand that. So when it says invest in education, how? They don't even say how. Again, this is the NAACP. 2, economic empowerment. They go on to talk about Biden's infrastructure bill. They want people to get jobs through his infrastructure bill. Getting a good job doesn't undo the wealth that was stolen. Do you see what I'm saying? The NAACP knows this. 40 acres and a mule. General Sherman's promise did not happen. So you lose out on wealth because you don't have land. And you didn't have land to pass down generation to generation. So the generational wealth piece was missing. The NAACP seems to think that if you get this job through Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, you're going to be all set. You're going to get back that wealth that you lost, that was stolen from you. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. There is a difference between income and net worth. Income is what you earn. That's your salary. That's your payroll. Net worth is what you own minus what you owe. So if you have a lot of debt and you don't own anything, your net worth is in the negative. You see the problem? Let's go on. This is just freaking crazy. This is crazy. 3, housing. We want more housing, more public housing, more affordable housing for Blacks. You see what they focusing on? More public housing, more affordable housing. We've broken this down on the show before. I told you a lot of the affordable housing isn't actually affordable. And some of these developments are privatized. So the city still makes money off of it. This is the best they want for Black people. Public housing and affordable housing. This is the best they want. Why didn't they put home ownership? You see what's happening? Why didn't they put home ownership, guys? Public housing and affordable housing. That's where they want you to stay. That's where they think you belong. Goes on to say healthcare. Blacks don't have the same lifespan as majority of the population. We need programming that positively impacts our health, longevity, and mental health. They want you to take a class. This is Let's have programs to educate you about your health. No, how about you give everybody health insurance? How about you give everybody health care in this country? Go take this class. And the last one, Fillmore Heritage Center, the redevelopment agency, destroyed a great deal of the Harlem of the West when it instituted urban renewal programs and drove Black businesses and residents out of San Francisco. Our people need a Black center of town, just as there is a Japantown, a Chinatown. We need to preserve and protect the Fillmore Heritage Center and the surrounding Blacks, not only as a historic center of our people, but as a place to gather and grow the Black community for future generations. Okay, this involves businesses. Don't you need money to start a business? This is what they consider to be reparations. How are you going to, the Fillmore Heritage Center, you want people to have their own little town center like Koreatown, stuff like that. Okay. How were Black people in San Francisco supposed to get the money to start the businesses? But no. You can't have the cash. And I'm going to show you why they're telling them they can't have the cash in a second. Because the NAACP is suspect as fuck. Look at this. Hopefully this is the right one. The NAACP spoke against foundational Black Americans receiving $5 million in reparations. Meanwhile, they accepted $50 million from Wells Fargo. Why is the NAACP in bed with Wells Fargo? I think sometimes people, when they look at the NAACP, they think this is like a grassroots organization. No, it's corporate. So if they accepted $50 million from Wells Fargo, that means they're in bed with the banks. And if they're in bed with the banks, they are not about giving money to you, me, or anybody else, because the banks don't want it. You guys understand? The banks do not want Black people to have reparations. The banks do not want any of these universal programs implemented in this country either. They want to make money. The banks would rather steal money from you. Overdraft fees, the '08 housing crisis. Let me steal your home. This is a problem. This is why I tell you to follow the money. Now you see who the NAACP actually is. It's all about money now. Some of these organizations that started decades ago, they caved. Some of them used to be grassroots. Some of them used to actually organize and care about the people. But over the years, they decided to take money. So the NAACP is corporate today, and they're in bed with the banks, which means they're not about to try to help you get any type of monetary compensation whatsoever. That is why they approved those 5 items on that list, and they rejected the $5 million. And I don't care if it was $500,000, they probably still would have rejected it. Follow the money. Now, there's more. This is the NAACP's website in San Francisco. Let me show you something they have here. First of all, why is this still here? December 10, 2022. Look at the mission. This is the part that cracks me up. The mission of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality Economic equality. So how are you going to have economic equality, but they don't even want you to have the money that you're owed? People have every right to be livid about this. Out of all the organizations, it's the NAACP that does this to you. And there's more. They have political influences as well. This is from the company. I didn't know that Vice President Harris is a member of Dr. Amos Brown's church in San Francisco. So Amos is VP's pastor, president of the NAACP, and sitting vice chair for California Reparations Task Force. You see what's happening? Let's click on these images. Look, Reverend Dr. Amos C. Brown. Let me go to the next picture, if you'll let me. Here's a picture here. There's Kamala Harris and her husband and the Reverend. You see what's happening? Dr. Amos C. Brown meet the San Francisco NAACP branch officers. Dr. Amos C. Brown of San Francisco is a renowned civil rights leader who studied under Dr. King. The Democratic Party has a hold in the NAACP. And this is why you cannot let those organizations, you cannot let them allow politics to come in. You cannot let them allow politicians to donate money to them, to be a part of these organizations. They are heavily influenced by the political people and by the banks. So people have every right to be upset because, like I said, out of all the groups you expect to say no, you didn't expect to hear it from the NAACP. Even they don't even want you to have it because they're protecting the banks and the politicians. There you go. We got to wake up, guys. We got to wake up. Let me go to some of the comments here. The Oracle says the NAACP is arguing for everything that will keep the descendants of slavery shackled to the economic floor. Exactly. You're not really going to get ahead. They're going to keep you right where you are. You'll give you a little bit, just like Democratic Party. They'll give you a little bit, but not enough that you're actually going to thrive. Methical Madness says the NAACP has been gentrified. Terry says Dr. King is turning in his grave. I bet so. Bryce says the NAACP has been terrible for ages. It's not the same. It's not the same.